So, as promised, we have our panel discussion now. So I'm going to invite Vivian and Paul back to the stage, but also please show your appreciation and welcome Anna Bjornadottir, who's the Chief Service and Operations Officer for Isavia at Keflavik Airport. Please make your way up. Nice to see you. How are you? Please take a seat. Why don't you sit next to me here? Welcome back. Grab a seat. Welcome back and welcome, and good to have you here too. So in this session you can see here it's talking about how airports can adapt their evolving role, stay competitive in the coming decades. And maybe that's where I want to start, and Anna, I'll jump in here, because what we've essentially got here is three leaders from three very different airports, one of the busiest global hubs, one of the largest cargo and international passenger gateways, and one serving as a vital transatlantic connector. So it's really good to get your different perspectives on the same issues. And Anna, maybe let me start with you in terms, and I'll ask you all this question. How would you sum up how you are getting ready for the next 10, 15 years? What plans have you got in place? What is your key priority right now?
That's a big question. We have to, when coming from Keflavik Airport, of course, totally different airport from the big ones. We have to remember that this is the gateway to Iceland. Mm-hmm. I think 95% of all people traveling to and from the island go via Keflavik Airport. So it has to be a well-connected hub out of sheer necessity for the prosperity of the country. So it originates from that necessity to be a connectivity hub, and this is the main business model, of course, of our main hub airline, Icelandair. So our vision for the future is to connect the world through Iceland, no less, mm-hmm. in the middle of the Atlantic. But it's a strategic situation of the airport as well. So, and we have seen really a big growth year on year pre-COVID, and we didn't cope with that growth. Now we see a more steady growth, a more sustainable growth. And we're going to capitalize on that, to work smart. And we are just evolving from being a small airport where everybody knows everyone, and you're a phone call away from somebody to help you. But now we need processes, we need to work professionally and organize ourselves differently. So we focus a lot on that for the next few years. Of course, we follow our main hub airline closely. Our 5-year plan goes hand in hand with how they want to grow, how our hub airlines want to grow. And then when they are expanding their fleet, that will be our cue to also be ready to meet that growth when they do that.
I want to come on to some of the challenges of making sure you're in a good position to do that in a second. But Paul, let me follow up on the same thing. And we've touched on some of your big ambitions here. But what's front of your mind right now in terms of how you get ready?
Well, front of mind at the moment is the fact that we are embarking on a project which will build an airport which is almost 3 times the size of DXB, which is currently the world's largest international airport. But the thing that I've noticed, particularly in the last few years, is how the passenger demographic is changing so substantially across the industry, and how the needs of the predominant number of travellers at the moment is very different from those pre-COVID. Yeah. And I wonder how that's going to change again in future. I mean, you've only got to talk to, the Gen Zs and below about their concerns for the environment to understand how prominent that issue is going to be in the future. And I wonder how that's going to be, what impact that's going to have on aviation generally. I mean, I was looking at a statistic the other day that if you look at the moment, between 2 and 3% of hydrocarbon emissions come from aviation, but the way that other industries are moving to clean up their carbon footprint, we could be as much as 20% of the problem in a few years' time. So we just can't stand still. And one of the big problems of sustainability is 80 to 90% of emissions come from the combustion of jet fuel at the moment. Yep. Mm-hmm. And of course, sustainable aviation fuel, which is the only real interim solution until we get to new propulsion technology, is only, I think, 0.7%. I mean, we burn in our industry 1.019 million tons per day of Jet A1. Yeah. And that grew by 68,000 tons a day last year alone. SAF, if you put the entire annual production of sustainable aviation fuel into the fuel hydrants across the world, it would last 50 hours. So we're a long, long way of providing a sustainable solution for aviation. And my concern in the longer term is that could be our biggest problem.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll come on to some of that sustainability stuff in just a moment as well. And then Vivian, maybe I wonder what's at the top of your to-do list right now? Because we talked about your wish list and certainly the things that are already in train in Hong Kong. What is your first priority at the moment?
Okay. In the past 10 years, 5 to 10 years, our main focus is how to add capacity. Yeah. And that phase has been completed. And so the next 10 years, in fact, in our roadmap, focus on three things. Of course, one is that how to add float, that's basic. And then the other is, again, technology is the main thing that we put it in. We put a lot of effort on putting 5G, facial recognition, or autonomous vehicle to make sure that our service is even more efficient across the entire industry. And the third thing that, believe it or not, that when Paul talked about we are in a customer service industry, yep. I actually put myself into entertainment industry now, you know, and not just a service anymore. They want to be entertained, and so I'm building a team that to wow people with entertainment. You know, we're seeing that the customer on two sides. Business people, traveler want to be well serviced, but then most important is a fast and reliable and speedy, right? And the other side, that traveler that who go to enjoy their journey, they want to start the enjoyment beginning from the door to the door, so including the journey inside the airport. So when we're building the Terminal 2, we put that in mind. We even think that the Terminal 2 should be a theme park. You know, so when they're waiting for their flight, they should have fun in there, not until when they reach the journey. Yeah. So that's the focus, and I think that we're going to make some change on that side. That will be fun too. Yeah.
Anna, when you hear these sorts of discussions about, you know, these big mega projects and, you know, deep pockets and lots of revenue and, you know, hundreds of millions of passengers, where do you fit into this game? Because you have a really vital role, and actually, you know, being able to sort of work that niche is really important for what you can do here.
Yes, we can only dream of the size and the funding behind the other airports. So we have, of course, but we can aspire, and we always have to. And of course, we are in the same situation. We also have the passengers that want the good service, that want to be entertained, that want to have a flawless, hassle-free journey through the airport. So we look at other airports all the time to see how we can, what is best practice, what is done elsewhere, and then we have to be smart, really smart, to be able to do that on our scale with our limited number of staff, etc. But we aspire to be there, and we look to those big airports because they're really doing wonderful things.
And is there also an advantage in that, though? That, you know, if Paul or Vivian are going to roll out some sort of technology, it's going to be on a huge scale. It's hard to do it, you know, in a maybe trial or experimental fashion. You know, at your scale, are you able to say, well, actually, we can kind of figure this out as we go along, because it's not going to inconvenience 100 million people if it goes wrong?
It's a really good point. I come from telco and IT. Yeah. And many of our suppliers used to say, you're in a great position as a country because 400,000 people, that's a whole society with everything, you're practically a lab to try and test out things. Of course, you don't want to test everything mid-air, and you have to. This is a highly regulated industry compared to where I came from. But this is an opportunity, so you can really roll out fast, try things out, as long as they don't cost that much.
Yeah.
So it's really an opportunity, and we grasp that opportunity. And of course, growing. We emphasize a lot on keeping the agility, keeping the innovative mind as we grow. That is essential for us.
Paul, at the other end of the scale, do you ever get sort of frustrated that you're often the guinea pig? You know, and other airports will learn from you and what you've pioneered or you've kind of rolled out and gone, yes, this is how it works. Do you ever wish you could just import it from someone else and they've done all the hard work first?
Well, I think that the answer is yes, and I don't mind being shamelessly plagiarized, neither do I mind shamelessly plagiarizing other industries. I mean, if you look at what Uber's done to taxis, if you look what Amazon's done to home delivery, if you look what eBay has done to our lofts, now we can clear everything out and sell it, those are transformational businesses that have taken a completely different look at an industry and changed them. Yeah. And I think the next revolution in airports is not going to come from within the airport industry. But it's interesting listening to what Christina said, because, you know, I'm thinking about Reykjavik and it being such a lovely, intimate airport. I mean, you know, as you know, big is not always beautiful, and I'm not going to name and shame, but I could think of many, many large airports that are horribly unfriendly because they have, you know, our legs are the same as length as they've been. Well, actually, yours are slightly longer. But I mean, as they have been for literally millions of years. Yet architects think it's no problem to walk 2 miles to a gate. It's no problem putting a lounge 46 minutes from where your aircraft is departing from. Yeah. It's no problem to have to, use escalators and lifts and trains and travelators in your journey between the lounge and the gate. You know, you probably worked out what airport I'm referring to here now. But the thing is, you see, what we have to do is we have to embrace this idea of intimacy at scale. Yep. And I think, quite honestly, once you get beyond 30 million, if not very careful, you can start to lose it as a customer service proposition. Yeah. That's why DWC Al Maktoum International Phase 2 is actually 8 airports with about 30 million capacity of each of those 8 airports, which are completely independent with all the facilities, lounges, aircraft stands, interfaces with rail and road. They will be able to stand alone. And the idea is we will use AI to allocate aircraft stand capacity. So we put all of the airlines and aircraft co-located within the same terminal to minimize the walking distances for connecting passengers. Yeah. So effectively, we'll be 8 independent but coordinated airports within one environment, because I think the idea of creating an airport of 260 million and forcing all of those customers to go through one check-in and one security and on one train will be a total nightmare, and it will not fulfill the passenger service goals and definitions that I think we need. Yes.
Yeah, it's a really important point. Vivian, I promised we would talk about biometrics as well in Hong Kong at the airport. And I wonder, Paul there talks about intimacy at scale. And I wonder how you do that with so much technology as well. Does that help or hinder when it comes to trying to, recognize someone as an individual and their needs and their requirements on that journey? Because we all know every passenger is there for a different reason. Where does biometrics come into this? Because your rollout at Hong Kong has been incredible, but I wonder what lessons you've learned about how maybe sometimes you need to roll it back a bit to make sure you're giving good service. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree with Paul about intimacy, but definition of that is probably from the customer side. What's intimacy? I think nowadays, intimacy doesn't mean that they want to face somebody. They want to have their own space. They want to enjoy the way they want to. And that's why we want to use biometrics, for example, to reduce the unnecessary process for them. And therefore, they have more time to enjoy their journey. So through that, I think that the past few years' experience is positive. But people like that. At the very beginning, people still worry about that with their privacy issue. And we do have a opt-out option, but then we see 98%, 99% people doesn't opt out. They want to get through all those channels as fast as possible. Our challenge used to be, how do we convince government agency to do so? Because the process not only involves airports, there's immigration and custom, and is immigration willing to implement more on biometrics.
Yeah.
And as I travel many airports, I see that many airports, not only airport, the country immigration also improving. Japan, London, I see it, Singapore, only take 5 seconds to pass through immigration. That certainly is a great experience for the passenger. You asked a question that whether that we cannot sit back a little bit and think how to reinvent this. But I think that we actually like to do more, use biometrics, doing more. We not only implement on the passenger, we'll implement, of course, on our staff. So even in the back operation, many things are implemented using facial recognition. They don't need to carry, be there, pass anymore, just pass through. That add efficiency. And we also work with a nearby hotel, convention center. They can use their facial to go through all those convention and hotel. That certainly adds more time for passenger or visitor to enjoy their time.
Yeah.
And, at the time for them to enjoy their intimacy.
Yeah. We talked about sustainability as well, and Anna, I want to come back to what one of your advantages, geographically very advantageous where you are, but also in terms of natural resources. I'm right in saying the airport is 100% powered by renewables, is that right? What does that allow you to do in terms of sustainability? And we'll come on to SAF in a minute, because I know, like everyone, that's a problem, but talk to me about your renewables, first of all.
Yes. All electricity in the airport is, of course, come from renewable energy. We're lucky to have both hydro energy and geothermal energy in abundance. Of course, there's high activity, and you maybe heard of all the volcanic activity close by the airport, which also it's a good sign of the warm water that's down there. So we have to take the good with the bad. But of course, we struggle with also want of technology for example, for our big equipment, for the snow sweepers that work hard all winter, and they work a lot just to clean. Once to clean the whole area is about the equivalent of 140 soccer fields, football fields.
Wow.
So and that goes several times a day. So this is probably our biggest challenge. It's to be able to have renewable energy powering our big equipment.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we are lucky enough to have everything else electrified already.
Yeah. But not SAF.
Not SAF, and that's that's a different question, because we don't have the food stock in Iceland to produce it ourselves.
Yep.
If we would have that or import that food stock, we would probably have to increase our energy production by 40% for the country to be able to produce it. So that will have to be imported eventually.
And then Paul, on your side, I mean, you've got a lot of sun, maybe not hydropower, but you've got a lot of sun. How much are you able to use? And increasingly, I guess, as you move, how much does that figure in the new infrastructure? Do you be able to harness more renewables? And then we'll come on to SAF in a second.
Well, I think the whole business of sustainability in airports is becoming more sophisticated, and moves in technology actually are assisting in this. I mean, solar power now costs about 15% per kilowatt hour compared to what it cost in 2010.
Yeah, and that
so it's a
changes,
very sustainable solution. And if you read the New Scientist this month, apparently 0.3% of the Earth's surface would be all it would take to provide enough solar power to power the entire planet. So, and of course, solar power harnesses existing heat. It doesn't generate new heat. So it's a very, very good way of harnessing power of the sun and transmitting it into other forms that we can use it. So I think that's incredibly important. It could also play a huge role in the production of SAF as well, because power to liquid is a very, very early science, and it's not very effective at the moment. But if solar power in abundance could be harnessed to produce liquid by harnessing, carbon from the atmosphere and producing liquid fuel, then we are really getting somewhere. But the big problem at the moment, as I was saying earlier, is that SAF is 4 times as expensive per litre compared to Jet A1. The production of it is tiny, and the difficulty at the moment is that airlines, particularly in the US, are not mandated to use SAF, but producers are mandated to produce it. Yeah. And in Europe, we have the opposite problem. Airlines are mandated to use an increasing blend of SAF, but we're not mandated to produce it. Yeah. So unless we somehow break this deadlock, in my view, what we should be doing is applying a very small levy to the huge business of supplying Jet A1 into aircraft to help equalize the cost differential. That way we can create demand. If we create demand, we'll stimulate production. Yeah. And if we stimulate production, we'll increase the volume and bring the price down. So someone somewhere has to break this cycle. And my campaign is to get governments to agree a SAF structure which diverts some of the soft taxation money they derive from the aviation industry into subsidizing the production of SAF to encourage it to be produced at volume. We need research into different feedstock. Could marine kelp, for example, in the ocean be a good source for SAF production? Can we accelerate research into PTL, power to liquid from solar energy? There must be a way of providing this drop-in interim until we get an alternative propulsion technology for future long-range aircraft. So, changing technology has to go hand in hand with governments moving in lockstep with the industry to clean up the carbon footprint of aviation. We don't want to be the last outstanding transport industry that is responsible for the majority of the carbon emissions, in personal mobility. That's not a good way for us to end our tenure of this planet, really.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of effort's gone into decarbonising passenger aviation. And I wonder, Vivian, for you, cargo is still hugely carbon intensive, isn't it? And a big part of your operations are cargo. I mean, is there a frustration, actually, that there's not more being done in that sphere to decarbonise cargo that obviously we all rely on, but is still a huge polluter, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. That definitely, especially we see that most of freight are using old model of aircraft. That's the worst. However, even in our side of the world, we are also pushing to decarbonize. That the city is going to, we are probably the second or third one, is going to impose to certain percentage for airline to use SAF. That's also a challenging issue because many cities or many countries haven't started to do that. So it makes the city maybe less competitive to attract airline. But that's something we need to do. We see that the weather, in fact, I do believe that global warming is here. We see the weather in our side of the world, the hurricane or typhoon are getting bigger and bigger and worse. And we need to, especially in this industry, we need to also think what we need to do to contribute to slow down that weather change. And so what can the airport do? You asked about cargo, we're concerned about not only cargo and all others. What can we do? So this year, we start to launch a campaign, including government, lobbying government. In fact, our chief executive just announced that in the next couple of years, there will be an announcement on adding certain percentage demanding that airline need to use a SAF. And also, we are going to build a blending facility, to invest a blending facility in our site to contribute on speeding that up. And by the way, that if you're interested, we are tendering a process for waste to hydrogen, a facility for waste to hydrogen. And this is a proven technology, very successful. And waste to hydrogen, and with adding one process, it can be waste to hydrogen and then to SAF also. So that's also for the future. And we are tendering that. If you have that sort of technology, we welcome you to come to Hong Kong to operate. And so we are putting all sorts of efforts. Of course, we have other programs working with our industry, including cargo, to incentivize them to making effort using the e-car or any kind of process to which we reduce the carbon footprint. I totally agree with the panel here, and that's a top agenda to put inside any airport for airport operator.
Thank you. I have loads of questions, but I'm aware there may be some in the room. Can I have a show of hands if you've got questions? I mean, I'm happy to just keep going, but I will come out if anyone has questions with a microphone. Don't be scared. Shove your hand up if you've got a question. Oh, you're all so polite. There's a couple here. Bro, I'll come down, actually. That's probably easier, isn't it? Excuse me. One sec. I'll come to you. Don't worry. Can I have this? Oh, I'll get another microphone. Hang on. Thank you. So, I just say where you're from and who the question's for. I'll hold it.
Yeah, hi. My name is Brett Burgess. I work for Boeing Jeppesen. You made a comment about Iceland needing to increase their domestic production of energy by 40% in order to make SAF natively. I didn't quite understand that comment. Could you just elaborate on that?
Sure, very happy to elaborate on that. At the moment, a litre of SAF is about 3 to 4 times the cost of a litre of Jet A1. And to get a 10% blend of SAF, the problem is that the production isn't adequate to be able to increase the blend to make a sufficient impact. So I think the proposal is, can we lobby governments globally to say, if they could divert some of the soft taxation in some countries or apply a levy in other countries, which is small, on every single litre of Jet A1 that's supplied to an aeroplane, could that small subsidy be used to equalise the cost of a litre of SAF so that all fuel, whether it's SAF or Jet A1, actually costs the same? If we could do that, then clearly production of SAF would increase, because suppliers would then invest in production knowing that they're going to be able to sell SAF at the same price as Jet A1, and the industry would be pretty insatiable in absorbing the SAF production globally and injecting it into the fuel supply system, because governments in the short term have taken this initiative to subsidize the cost. As the blend increases from 10% to 20 up to 50 and maybe beyond, hopefully the need for the subsidy then drops away, because the cost of each litre of SAF drops because of the scale of production, introducing economies of scale into the pipeline. So that, I think, is the mechanism that we're trying to persuade governments to embrace, to stimulate SAF production by subsidizing the cost in the short term, which then creates a lower unit cost, which then creates much higher demand and absorption in the industry. Does that make it a little bit more understandable than the way I said it before, hopefully?
We'll try it. If it squeaks, I'm sorry. They're telling me off for being in front of the speakers. We have a question down here. Where are you from and who's it for?
Yeah, hello. My name is Mike Slynn from Hawk Rose. It's a question for Paul mainly. As Dubai's transition from being a rapidly growing airport with space into being one that is very constrained, I was wondering where you're seeing most of the pinch points that's going to be the biggest problem for further growth? Is it runway capacity, is it your terminal throughput, or is it airspace capacity?
Interesting question. Without doubt, the largest problem we have at Dubai was the failure to protect the boundaries of the airport back in the 1960s for further development. So we are fully developed on all four sides of the airport, which means actually our runways are not the requisite 1035 meters apart to enable full independent operations. So we have two dependent runways, which actually is our major constraint. We introduced a stagger of the two runways to increase runway capacity about sort of 20 years ago, and that has helped a bit. But we're helped at the moment by the large capacity of the A380, with Emirates having, I think, 117 of them, and I think over 90 are in service now. That helps because our average movements, passengers per movement is about 235, which is a lot higher than most other airports. I think Heathrow's about 179, something like that. So that helps. We're also 24/7, which helps hugely with our throughput. So I think we've got most of the efficiencies that we possibly can out of the airport because of the nature of our operation and the fact we are 24/7. That's a huge benefit. I mean, a lot of other airports are closed sort of 7-8 hours of the day, and you know the infrastructure sits idle. We're able to power on through the night 24/7. So yes, runways are the ultimate constraint because the number of movements is finite. I mean, very interested by the Capgemini presentation earlier of how we might perhaps get more capacity out of the runway if we could actually reliably schedule more capacity because we know more about wake turbulence. I mean, the 5 nautical miles separation from A380 to narrow body is a limitation at the moment. So it's primarily that. As I explained earlier, we are introducing new technology to get customers through the airport much quicker. We've covered pretty much every square meter of our footprint with concrete. We're creating 10 more aircraft stands over the next couple of years to try and find more space for aircraft. I mean, it's probably a case study in how you extract the most productivity from the least amount of square meterage of airport capacity in the world. I think we're probably right on the upper boundaries of what's possible. But, over the next few years, it's going to be a series of incremental moves to fine-tune that. And I think when we get to 114 million, I think the thing that we will have lost is most of the hairs on my head by that time. It's going to be a really, really big challenge to get to that number and still provide a decent level of customer service, which we must do, being in such a competitive business.
Thanks, Paul. There's another question down here.
Thank you. Ian Guillemin from Amadeus, and apologies, the question is a follow-up still for Paul. But first, actually, let me just take a second and applaud both the strategic vision for the industry on sustainability and also the very bold stance you're taking. So, taking the gap in between the price of, let's say, clean fuel to travel and jet fuel Air1, and at the same time, the volume of passengers increase that we forecast, how do you see it fit together? Is it maybe too much bullish assumptions in terms of growth for the next 20 years? Or do you see it more as a mix effect with regions indeed growing a lot, others suffering more? So just curious about your own perspective on this, Paul.
I think really it's quite hard to predict how that balance is going to change. I mean, we are catering for a changing world. I mean, if you look at the change in passenger demographic now, it's really, really interesting how people's requirements are changing. I mean, before it used to be we want luxury, we want lounges, we want the ability to dwell. Now I think it's speed and efficiency, which is quite fortunate for us because we won't have the capacity to provide the sort of long dwell. So I think Vivian's idea of an airport being an entertainment spot is a great concept if you've got the space. We want it to be of great entertainment for the shortest possible time to enable people to get through really quickly. But we are watching that changing demographic and seeing how the whole environmental concern will affect flows of air travel. But one interesting thing which I think will affect airports is how aircraft technology is changing. I mean, the narrow-bodied aircraft being sold now by Airbus and Boeing, and potentially the Chinese as well, you know, it's got the ability to fly non-stop for 9 hours. That's going to change, I think, the relationship between major hubs and secondary cities. That will change the industry a lot. I don't think it would detract from major hubs, because I think it would just give us many, many more cities with which to connect. But the fact that, you know, you can fly 9 hours means that so many secondary cities all over Europe that are out of range of Dubai with current aircraft technology are suddenly within the range. So, you know, it's a shame really that, you know, we only fly to Lisbon in Portugal when there are many other airports that actually people would want to fly to directly that will be viable with an A321 XLR or a 737-900 MAX, you know. So, and I think the same with France, the same with Spain. You know, I think there are only services to Barcelona and Madrid, and yet there are dozens of airports in Spain that could sustain direct services. So that will change. And I think personal mobility, we haven't talked about eVTOLs and what that will do for aviation. That's a whole another conference subject. I think the way we travel personally, both in small volume and in large volume, will change dramatically over the next few decades, which means that the growth of aviation in 10 years' time may look very different from the way it looks today.
Thanks, Paul. A question down front here. Hi.
Thanks, man. Sam Tree from Aviation Media Consultancy. So I'm a frequent traveler from Dubai to Hong Kong, from Paul's airport to Vivian's airport. Since the third runway opened in Hong Kong, I have noticed nothing but adding extra time of taxi for landing and takeoff. How are you going to fully utilizing the efficiency of having 3 runway and benefiting the passenger experience, enhancing the PAX-X?
I know. I got so many feedback on that. Extra taxiing time. It's like you're adding a few more rooms in your home. Certainly, from certain room get to your kitchens further away, right? And that's the issue, of course. Especially the way our aircraft control, they utilize the runway as arrival, departure, and mix. So for the 3 runway. So when you arrive, if you want to come to, I guess you use the Cathay Pacific all the time, right? So if you want to come to the main terminal and where the Cathay Pacific hub is, that you do have the taxi extra time, about 8 minutes. So the longest is about 15 minutes taxiing time, shorter is about maybe 6 minutes. And a lot of Hong Kong people complain. They want speed, they want efficiency. They cannot take 15 minutes as a standard. But is there any way we can improve? Really, that is the physical time, taxi from the arrival. I've been discussing with the air traffic controller whether we can do departure, arrival, and mix, because people don't care too much about departure. They're getting ready to rest. But when they arrive, they really get, very, their anxiety is high. They want to get home. With a 15-minute taxi time, in fact, when you arrive at the terminal, you take 15 minutes to pass everything to get to land side, another about 20 minutes to 30 minutes to get home. So you take only 40 minutes once you touch down to get home. So 15 minutes is not, acceptable. So what can we do with that physical time? The only thing we can do is that make him even more efficient once they get into a terminal. I cannot do too much to change air traffic control. We're trying very hard to work with them to change the utilization of the runway, but that seems to be difficult. I guess the challenge is to make it more efficient once they arrive to the terminal.
I think one of the biggest problems is, if I'm asked a single question, and that is, what is the biggest problem you face daily in running an airport? The answer is always the same: far too many stakeholders. far too many disparate processes that are not joined together. Now, in the past, we've tried to solve that by getting people in a room talking to each other, but we know that human nature makes that perhaps impossible to achieve across that entire disparate supply chain and all those processes. But we have a massive opportunity. The progress of AI in the airport space will be transformational because it will make all of those disparate processes connected. So total airport management, which is something that we are introducing at DXB, will enable us to schedule with ATC when an aircraft is, still 20 miles out, exactly where it's going to go, the taxi route it follows, trying to get it to interface properly with all of the different services, fuel, baggage, catering, etc., to optimize everything. And as I said earlier, with the new airport, we want to operate those 8 nodes, bringing everything together to make the most efficient flow for the customer, and also to eliminate walking distances and taxi times to the extent we can. And video analytics on every single stand is being introduced at DXB, and we will use that data to monitor speed and quality, taking a lot of technology actually from Formula One to make sure that our aircraft pit stops, we won't get them down to under 3 seconds, but we nevertheless want to move in that sort of idea of creating far more effective use of existing airport infrastructure so we don't have these extended inconveniences for customers. So technology, I think, is going to change the world that we know it as it is today.
Thank you both. There's a lady waiting patiently at the front. I'll come to you in a second, and there's just one question here.
Hi, I'm a product and propositions manager at Gatwick Airport. Paul, I know you previously were MD and chairman at Gatwick, so I just wanted to ask you firstly, what lessons did you or have you taken from Gatwick Airport to Dubai now? And then obviously, just opening up to the rest of the panel, Vivian, Anna, what, out of your previous learnings, what have you taken to new airports or when you start a new role? Or do you come in kind of a fresh pair of eyes for every new opportunity?
Again, a very good question. When I arrived at Gatwick, I was given the brief to say that the CAA was not very happy with the relationship between airlines and airports. And actually, when I arrived at Gatwick, I did an extensive study, and I'd previously been with Virgin Atlantic, so I knew how bad airports were because I'd been a customer. So I sort of looked at trying to see things from a customer perspective, and then tried to get the staff to all recognize how important it was to serve the airlines better and serve their customers, because I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding in many airports of who the customer is. I was told, well, the customers are the airlines and they are suppliers of our customers. I disagreed with that. I felt that we had a business-to-business relationship with the airlines to encourage them to improve the business-to-consumer relationship with their customers. And that seemed to work because, the customer service improved, the staff advocacy improved. And then when I went to Dubai, I applied that principle to try and get every single staff member focused on the customer. And when you go through airport security, which is unfortunately the only interface that many people see between airport staff and passengers, or guests as we call them, that sort of, get your liquids out, is there anything sharp in here, take your belt off, take your shoes off. It's not great customer service speak. You wouldn't use that as sonic branding in any other product. So, I think changing that attitude and reorientating the company to be a more engaging consumer company rather than an infrastructure manager with a sort of fairly distant relationship with the customer has been one of the major things, I think, in the airport industry.
Anna, let me jump in, because your background is telcos, isn't it? And when we spoke about this session, you said this reminds you of your previous job in the sort of early 2000s. What did you learn there that you've brought to this job?
Yes, it's really interesting question, interesting answer, because I had some of the same experience when I came to Keflavik Airport after being 20 years in a totally different industry. And the first that amazed me was that if I asked who is the main customer, I got very different answers. So some said passengers and some said airlines and mix of both. And what it turned out, we didn't have a clear business model at the airport. So we defined that, and now we have a good value proposition for the passengers, which is a bit different from the value proposition for the airlines. But it goes hand in hand. And what really also struck me when I came there is that we are not a big airport. I think we issue about 10,000 access cards every year, and Isavia, Keflavik Airport Operator, is maybe about 10 to 15% of all the staff at the airport. And when I came there, it was finger pointing everywhere. So we were pointing fingers at the airlines. They think they know the airport, they own the airport. They just don't know it, they own the airport. And Icelandair and the other airlines were pointing at us, you're just a landlord and you just do as you want and you don't ask us. So we had to totally turn that around. We made a new strategy for the airport, and we actually implemented a new pillar to our strategy, which was the airport community. Because that's it's essential for an airport to work. For us, being only 10 to 15% of all the staff, we cannot run the airport, never. So we have to cooperate. And this is one of our main focuses in our new strategy, is how we make that community work. And that comes with a culture change, I tell you.
Thank you. And a final brief question just down the front.
Thank you very much. Nina Kozinska, I'm EMEA lead, aviation lead for Equinix data centers. I have a question regarding Paul and Vivian, what you were saying earlier. With the increased number of passengers that you're expecting in the coming years, and the increase of data that is going through the airport actually, and managing in the most optimized and let's say AI-friendly way, how do you envision those challenges, and do you see it as a challenge and or opportunity to create a further optimization?
Yeah, we actually set target for us when we put effort in technology. For example, that when we use autonomous vehicle, our aim is to help our industry to reduce the manpower reliance by 15%, right? And within 5 years. We're actually already seeing that. I talk about we are providing a platform economy. So we invest in technology and investing in ground equipment pooling and using autonomous vehicles or ground handler agent or airline only need to pay per use to use those facilities. That reduce their cost of investment and also reduce their reliance on manpower. So we set key targets performance, and we measure on that. So I mentioned about 15% of manpower reliance. We also mentioned about that. I also want to mention about reduce the cost of investment for airline by certain percentage. Also reduce the processing time for process to process. Right now, passing through immigration, passing through our security, including go through the entire searching, is a 4.5 minutes. No more, no less. And we want to improve that to 4 minutes using technology, data and AI. We're reducing the need of searching by using data analytics and AI. So those are all good examples. Continuously, we're going to invest more on 5G and autonomous vehicle and achieve those goals. Thank you.
Thank you all. Our time is up, and I know you all have to be places, so I'm grateful we're about 5 minutes late. But please put your hands together for appreciation for Vivian, for Paul, and for Anna. Thank you so much. Thank you.